Get into it. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, am I loud enough? Do I need the microphone, or can everyone hear me pretty clearly? Good. Okay, perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Amar. I am the CEO and co-founder of ZenMade. I run a little software company that helps cleaning companies to do their scheduling. So the good news before we start this presentation is that I have nothing to sell you, unless you guys happen to run a maid service, in which case come talk to me afterwards. But other than that, this is just about how I work with my executive assistant. I said this when I first did this presentation for DC, Mexico, way back in the day, that like the reason for this presentation is because I want to hang out more with you guys. That if you're sitting here and watching this, chances are we'd be very good friends. If you guys had more time, I have lots of time because I have an executive assistant. You guys probably don't. That's why you're seated where you are and why I'm seated here. So you can see, ignore the date on there. I've changed the date on this presentation multiple times. So yeah, there it is. Okay, today, what you are going to learn, this presentation's only going to be maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah. Move forward a bit. Okay. Okay. No pressure there. Just everyone's scooting a little bit more. All right. All right, cool. So what we are going to learn today during this presentation is why you should have an executive assistant if you don't already. What's the difference between an executive assistant and an administrative assistant or a virtual assistant? How to work with an executive assistant, and 4 ways to communicate with your executive assistant. And then a bonus point down there at the bottom is why letting your executive assistant pick your presentation photos is sometimes a mistake. I did not pick that one out. I am very happy with it, though. All right, already said this, goal of this presentation, just want to do dope shit with DC people. That's a fake quote from Kanye West, but yes, that's why you guys should have a DC, so that you have more time to hang out with your friends and to do more things like this and spend less of your time working while being more productive. That's a big one. Easy to spend less time working, hard to do it while being productive. All right, why hire an executive assistant? This is you. Without an executive assistant, that's Clark Kent, for those of you guys not looking at the screen, functioning member of society, social in his little friend group, makes a decent amount of money, by all means a happy, workable person in society. On the right, you have a literal superhero that saves people from burning buildings, makes sure that nothing goes wrong, even when it's not their responsibility at all, and essentially is superhuman. That's why they're Superman. So that is you with an executive assistant. Switch. All right. Benefits of hiring an executive assistant. You can see 4 photos there that all emphasize the exact same thing. Ultimately, it just comes down to more time with friends and family. You guys can choose to spend however much time your executive assistant creates for you. You can choose to spend it however you want, in the gym, doing more work, or with friends and family. You can be more reliable for your team. I'm sure that some of you in here have thought about having an executive assistant, and maybe we're concerned that you might be perceived as lazy or something along those lines. I can tell you that my team thoroughly enjoys working with me a lot more now that I have an executive assistant than prior to that, because I'm much more organized. You can think out loud and get things done in your life and in your company. I'll show you guys exactly how that works in just a couple of minutes here. And then a couple bonus ones down here on the bottom right. You can obliterate procrastination. You can deal with ADHD if you have ADHD like me. And you can remain on better terms with your government and with your wife or your spouse if those are differing entities in your life. the difference between an executive assistant and a virtual assistant. Show of hands here, how many people here have hired or worked with a virtual assistant or administrative assistant before? Okay, and how many people here have already hired an executive assistant? Anyone already have executive assistant? Okay. How many people here have seen this talk before? Couple folks, yeah, Mexico.
Best talk. I still tell people.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay, cool. So differences between an EA and a VA, they all really come down to the first thing of recurring versus one-off tasks, that if you have an administrative assistant or a virtual assistant, they tend to be very, very good with things in your business or in your life that have a tendency to repeat. So anything that you define one time and then they can do it in perpetuity is going to be a great task for a VA or for an administrative assistant. An executive assistant, on the other hand, is the kind of person that you can ask to do a one-off task that you will never need to do and never need to think about, like ever again, and they will go and they will figure out exactly how to do that, right? So another way of defining that is that an administrative assistant or a virtual assistant will follow your instructions, but you have to define those and then make sure they're perfect, all of that stuff. Whereas an executive assistant is going to think for themselves and is going to figure it out. Said another way, the VAs will follow SOPs or standard operating procedures, while your executive assistant will create SOPs for you. So you tell them you need this done and you need it done ongoing in your business, they will come back to you with here's the 8 steps that me or someone else needs to follow. And finally, what that means is that you become the editor in your business and not the writer. So if you guys are like me, you probably struggle from blank page syndrome, where whether it's writing an SOP or whether it's working on an email or anything along those lines, you're staring at a blank page and you just have no idea where to start. Whereas for me, if someone shows me, here's a really crappy version of that email that you wanted to write, I can look at the crappy version and then immediately make a bunch of improvements, and it's just way easier on like your headspace. So that is that. Any questions on all this? I didn't stop for questions the last time I gave this presentation, so okay, cool. This is Frane. Frane's the bald guy. Frane, and then that's me next to him, obviously. So this is Frane. Frane is based in Croatia. He is my executive assistant. He's been with me for 2 years now. Is that about right, Alex? Yeah, about 2 years. He's been with me for about 2 years now, so this is just us in different places. On the left, you can see us working on this actual presentation before obviously we finalized it. On the right, that's us in the Netherlands just a couple of weeks ago for the ZenMade team retreat. And in the middle is me, Frane, and my wife, Fran. That is very, very confusing. That's another life pro tip here. Do not hire someone who shares the name as your significant other, because that is a pain in the ass. And the number of people that I show up to appointments and they're like, oh yeah, your wife booked this for you, or like your assistant booked this for you, and it's confusing. So which she's not so happy about either. So yeah, okay, cool. Working with your executive assistant. So in the past, when I have spoken with friends about hiring an executive assistant, the biggest thing that people tend to ask me is, what does your executive assistant actually do for you? Right? And what I've found is that when I have given people an actual list of 20, 50, 100 different things that folks, or that Frane will do for me on a day-to-day basis, what I've found is I can watch people's eyes as they scan the list and their eyes just slowly like glaze over, as most people end up actually talking themselves out of hiring an executive assistant because they read all the things that I do and they're like, I don't need that. I can do that myself. It's not worth the money. And they go through and they talk themselves like out of it. So what I'm going to do here is, instead of sharing with you guys a full list of all the things that Frane does to help me, instead I'm going to share with you guys the 4 or 5 different ways that Frane and I work together and collaborate on a daily basis. And what I've found is that you'll probably be able to think through, if I had an executive assistant, what would these conversations, these calls, what would these communications look like for me? At the end, we can talk through some of the specific tasks and you'll see some examples here, but just wanted to explain why I'm not just giving you guys like a laundry list of things. Okay, perfect. So number 1 is voice notes. How many people here are using some sort of voice note app to like record things for themselves and something like that? You guys have probably seen there's a lot of there's voice notes, AI, and quite a few other things that are out there that allow you to now like take notes for yourself, which are beginning to become a lot more popular. What I have set up is I have a tool called Athena Delegation, which allows me to, with one click of a button, to start a voice note, so there's no distractions or anything like that. I don't know how you guys are going to be able to see, but I just clicked one button to open up the app, and it literally opens up and is already recording a message. And then I can just say anything that I want to in here, and it goes directly into my my chat with my executive assistant on Slack. So yeah, Order Me Principles by Ray Dalio. So with that message right there, now in a little bit, I'll check my Audible, and in my library will be that book for me to just download. The only thing you can't do is download the book for me, right? And so what this allows me to do is it allows me to have any thought during the day, and with one click of a button to add it to my to-do list, to make sure that Frane does it, to essentially just like get things done, or to make sure that things are going to get done. So this is how I communicate with my team a lot, that Alex, who's sitting up here in the front, is my CTO and works with me at ZenMain. So occasionally he will just get messages from my executive assistant just saying, hey, Amar said that we need to do X, Y, Z. Right? And so it's essentially my one click connection to everyone else if I want to just like share things uninterrupted. So yeah. And then, yeah, I'll talk about that on the left side, I guess. So essentially just here you guys can see an example on the left side that me and Jeremy, who I don't think is here right now, we were in Portugal last year, and we're looking for like a 5-star restaurant to go to, sent it over to Frane, and he found all the places that were within like a 10 or 15-minute drive of where we were staying.
Quick question,
Yeah.
tool, is it a voice note and then that goes immediately to Slack and that's the transcription at the top there, or have you written that?
What you see on screen at the top there is the transcription from the Athena tool. So all that I've done is I just recorded the 17-second message there, and the rest is all on autopilot. Yeah. So no, if I had to type all that stuff out, no executive assistant would help me because I just wouldn't tell them what to do. So yeah. So I'm
Possibly rebranded to Athena Assistance. I'm just trying to find it online. Athena Delegation.
So Athena Delegation, I believe, is an app that's only for iPhone, and it's by the Athena Assistance company. So that's probably why you're finding that it's a free tool that they give out. So yeah, a couple people here work with them. This will go. Okay, perfect. Daily to-do list is the second way. So the other thing that we do is every morning at about 9 o'clock in the morning, I will jump on a call with my executive assistant where we have our to-do list. And this is a to-do list that just builds up over time. So whether it's me sending him a message going, hey, tomorrow we need to take care of X, Y, Z, tomorrow we need to review this video, whatever it might be, all of those things end up on a daily to-do list like the one that you see on the right there. And then we jump on a call and run through that to-do list together. And so there will be some things that we'll want to do on the to-do list. There's some things that it's just we need to discuss, or it's for like further instructions for after we're done with the call, for example. And then the other thing that this functions for is, like I mentioned, I have ADHD, which means that I avoid doing work that I know that I need to do. Now I tell my assistant, don't let me off this call until I'm done with this task, and I'm either sitting there awkwardly for 3 hours or I can just do the work. So it works brilliantly for accountability as well, and just make sure that things actually get done. So yeah, accountability, to-do list, and then I can essentially multiply my time on this call because I can so quickly get through things. I'll show you guys how I go through my email inbox in just a minute as well. The last thing, because I'm sure that a bunch of you guys were probably cringing in your seats when you heard that I talk to somebody every single day in my business, it's completely optional for me. So it happens during Frane's working hours every day, which means that if I don't show up, he's just working on other things anyways. Perfect example is this week. Today is Thursday, and I have shown up for exactly 0 of the calls this week. Didn't have to tell him, just didn't show. So, you know, that's the nice thing about being the boss. If he did that to me, I would be pissed. So, yeah.
Does he still send you his accountabilities every day, every morning? Check, or if you don't attend the call, then
He will usually send this to me regardless of whether or not we are chatting, because oftentimes what will happen is if I'm not jumping on the call, I will record a quick voice message going, hey, number 1, do this, number 2, do this, and I'll run through it. So yeah, he'll usually send this to me. Not always, but most days he'll send it to me regardless of whether we're talking. So Yeah, a couple more examples up here of just how we've kind of like done it like over time. Generally what happens, because this list probably looks like a lot, is so I keep a lot on this list that it's essentially my like endless to-do list, but what I'll oftentimes do is I will jump on and I'll immediately be like everything after like number 8 or whatever, just cross off for today. Right? So I'll usually be trying to take this list and get it down to the 2 or 3 things that I really need to focus on, but I like having the entire list regardless to look at on a daily basis. So that can be arranged. That was not part of the plan, but I can do that. Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's a recording of this already, like on YouTube, although this is like an updated version. But yes, I can also give out the slides as well. So yes. So he's my executive assistant. So his entire purpose is to just make me more productive. So anything he can do.
It's just I'm saying like for example like he's gonna work on a tree interface something, but is he just sending information or delegating things or giving a report or is he actually managing a team? It's just I'm not sure like what
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question. Yeah. So the question is essentially like almost like what are his qualifications or what exactly is he doing? So that's something that you have to kind of find with each of like your executive assistants, that when you find a good executive assistant, they will tend to be very, very talented, very, very good communicators, and then what they might be very specifically good at will depend a lot like on their history. So my guy, for example, he's worked with other entrepreneurs as a project manager before and has a lot of like website development stuff. So when I'm asking him to do things on like WordPress or on my personal blog, he's actually going in and doing that. A lot of the stuff that you see here, like if you're questioning whether or not an executive assistant can do that or not, chances are he's communicating with like my head of marketing, and then my head of marketing is actually the one like doing the work. So it'll really depend a lot on the specific talents that you find. Yeah.
Clarify. So is this your to-do list or his to-do list, or is that the same?
So the left side would be my to-do list. The right side would be his to-do list. Right now, I think we've got it properly labeled at the top. His is labeled, but that would just have been a direct message to me. Yeah.
You didn't pull this on top of using project management, like sign, like is that happening on the side and he's not keeping up?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so the question was, is all of this happening in addition to project management, like to other tools like that? So with that, in this particular case, no, but that's because I hate project management tools, that I have a very, very well-organized Notion that I never log into because he keeps it up to date, and just when I need something, he tells me where to find it. But for a lot of people, this would be happening there. For me, I really like having this. In fact, he actually was like, oh, we could do this like a better, more efficient way, and was like, we'll do this in this project management software. And I was like, I'm just never going to check that, right? Like this message has to come into me daily, otherwise it doesn't work for my ADHD brain. And I think that's a really important thing, is when you find someone, they're there to make you productive, so it should work into the way that your brain works, not necessarily what's like, traditionally most productive or whatever. So yeah. Okay. Another way that we work together is, so I'm on a lot of calls these days. Probably 80% of my work these days is essentially calls. So he watches the replays of all of the calls, usually on double speed. He'll usually be assisted by an AI note taker like Fathom or something along those lines, but he goes through every single one of my calls and makes sure that everything that I say that I'm going to do on those calls is added to my to-do list. He makes sure that other people do the things that they say that they're going to do, figures out what are the follow-ups, what are the check-ins, all of like those things. And yeah, like as I've got like up on there, this allows me to be far more present on calls, that I'm the type of person where I can look like I'm paying attention or I can be paying attention, but I can't do both. So like when I'm taking notes on a notepad, if I'm taking notes, I'm not listening to what's being said anymore. And if I'm listening to what's being said, whatever I'm writing on the notepad is not what I mean to be writing. probably what's being said. So that makes it just a lot easier. And then also, I don't know about you guys, but I'd always get concerned about committing to doing things, particularly as the CEO, and be like, yes, I'm going to get this done, and then not getting it done. And so that doesn't happen anymore since we have put this process in place. This is something that I recommend everyone doing immediately when you hire a new executive assistant. The fastest way to get your assistant familiar with your role in the company, as well as all of the relationships in the company, is to watch the calls actually happening. So he watches every single one of my calls every single week and is on top of it in large part because of this. So yeah.
So I do this with my EA.
Yeah.
And it's great, but I also recognize that sometimes like I have like super confidential information and she'll ultimately watch this. And it feels like it's actually caused some sort of challenges where it's like we're talking about like compensation and hiring other people from abroad.
Yeah.
And these people make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
You're hiring another role, in their country as an example.
Mhm.
How have you dealt with anything like that if you have? In terms of like super confidential information, you forget to turn off the share button. They're still going through their process of watching your videos.
Yeah.
You run into that?
Okay. Yeah. So the question was, what happens if you're talking about confidential information? What happens if you're talking about people's compensations and stuff like that? And have we run into anything like that?
Maybe you're having a coaching call and you're talking about the
Performance. Yeah. So I would say that there are going to be times where it's appropriate to pause or to stop like the recording. I would say that it's quite rare, but it does happen. For me, I mean, the easiest way in terms of compensation is just to pay them well. That like I pay him enough that I'm comfortable talking about whatever numbers with the rest of the team. Where even if we're talking about paying someone 3 times as much as he earns, he knows that he earns a very, very good rate for the work that he does. And so I find that solves most issues. But yeah, there are times where it's like afterwards I'm like, okay, I got to delete that recording, and stuff like that. But I tend to very much be open book about these things. Other people aren't, and so like if you don't want to share those things, it might be pausing the recordings. There's different ways of dealing with it. Yeah.
You mentioned about government at the start. So does
Yeah.
that mean he helps you with paperwork?
Yes.
And are you concerned about sharing, like, does that mean tax stuff?
Yeah, no, he handles all of my tax stuff and everything. I'm probably much more open with him for that information than like a lot of people would be. That was not access that I gave to him initially. That was something that was earned over time as like that trust and the relationship like built up. One thing that it's important to note though is that even though he does like my taxes and all of that, we still sit down on a call together and do a screen share and go through every single line item to make sure that it's correct. But for me, that's still, that's like 10% of the work is just making sure that it's right. But that, yeah, he's got access to pretty much everything. He has access to our banking and all of that stuff that like theoretically he could run off with maybe $500,000. I don't know, something like that. Like,
Can I just add a really quick point here?
yeah.
There's a benefit to doing this, which is your team will trust you more if they know that someone else has access to your secrets, right? Because I said to my team with my assistant, I'm like, if she has access to everything, she knows how much money I've got in every single bank account. If she comes to a call looking sad, you guys should be sad. If she comes to a call looking happy, you have to know that everything's okay, right? And that increases trust within the company. So.
Yeah. That's why I told my EA to smile always. Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of trust involved here in this relationship with an executive assistant.
Yeah.
What kind of onboarding or ramping up process did you go through in this clearly successful example, before you're at that point where they have this level of access and this level of autonomy?
Yes, the question was about how to like build trust, right, and how to get to this point that you're able to do like these things. So I mean, honestly, it's just slowly over time, and it's just starting at whatever level that you're comfortable with, right? So like I didn't give him access to all of the systems all at once. It was probably a year before like he had access to our banking, but it was considerably earlier than that for Stripe, for example, because there's just not that much that can be done. So I think it's really just like a building it over time. For me, I think what I'm typically evaluating is mainly the communication skills. that like it's less about the skill level and more it's like, are they communicating about everything that could be like a minor breach of trust and just like things like that, right? Where very early on he was pointing out to me of it's like, hey, like just so you're aware, like I have access to like these people's like social security numbers because like you gave me access to this. Was that your intention? Right? And so it's just like little things like that that built up the trust relatively quickly. But even then, like I really took my time on like on giving access to everything. Yeah, Mark?
Do you guys have any project manager or operational manager role in the company?
Yeah.
And how much of overlap is there between your ops?
Yeah, so the question was, do we have like anyone in operations or yeah, helping with like that side of the business? So I don't know if I have a slide about it here, but you oftentimes get the, oh, like what's the difference between like an executive assistant, a COO, like a head of operations, like that sort of thing. So we have a head of operations, but the difference is that like her job is to make sure the entire company is running smoothly. His job is to make sure that I am running smoothly. Right, and so there's a massive difference between those two. We actually took a personality test with the two of them and me with like how we would work together, and she scored of like an absolutely not for being my executive assistant, but very high on being like the ops, whereas he was like a B+ for both and could do both. So it depends on like what you're specifically looking for. In this case, I just wanted someone that was going to maximize my personal output. So yeah, yes.
Kind of related to the earlier question, do you find it weird that somebody on your team knowing exactly how much money you're making, and does that
No, not really. No. Yeah, I don't really know what to. I mean, if you're British, you just got to suck it up, you know. Like, like I just, I don't know. Like for me, it's just, you know, it's just it is what it is. You know, I've taken the risk. I've put in the time. Like I earn what I earn, and like, you know, if they don't like it, I'm going to be here for a lot longer than they are, you know. So, but no, not really a concern. But I could see why that would be like uncomfortable. So if I pause to think about it, probably I just don't pause to think about it. So, Anton, yeah.
How much do you pay your executive assistants?
So I pay $3,400 a month US, and so in Croatia, I mean, he lives like a couple houses down from like Luka Modric. For any football fans that are like that are in like these very well known and well paid, and he like lives in like the same neighborhood as those guys. It's like 3.5 times the average like salary there. So it's a lot for Croatia, but like I would happily pay 6 or 8K for like the equivalent position in the US.
Did you start on that?
No, started a bit lower. Started like maybe 2,800. Yeah. Yeah, job rack. Yeah. At some point, I'm gonna have to go on with the slides, but we'll keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel at some point that people that are close to you and that you kind of put them in the middle of the communication channel, are they kind of upset at some point, or do they resent it?
Generally, no. Okay, yeah, sorry. The question is do I find that it kind of gets in the way of relationships if I'm sort of putting Frane in between me and someone else? And so generally, he's not there to replace communication between me and any other team member. He's generally there to move things along faster. Right? So it's when I don't have time to maybe define something or to send something over, but like he's not talking to anyone that reports to me on like my behalf. He might be putting in like a group Slack channel or something to get a conversation started, but he's never replacing me. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go on with the slides and then we're almost to the Q&A anyways. So yeah, Slack messages throughout the day in terms of just going back to what we're talking about, different ways we work together. He gets a notification every single time that my name is mentioned in Slack. So a lot of the time when I see messages in Slack, he's already gone through and helped the person, which is really nice, or he's just added it to my to-do list. So even if I don't check Slack, I'm still taking care of the things that the team needs me to, and it just prevents me from being a bottleneck, or he prevents me from being a bottleneck for too long, right? So yeah, delegates for me among the team, bumps messages and keeps me accountable, and then where possible, he will do the job. Emails, this is just a screenshot of my email inbox. Essentially, he monitors my 2 email inboxes, personal and professional. He will answer anything that he can like help me with. He'll add to to-dos. and then accountability and delegation. This is what I was saying before about on my daily call. I can jump on the daily call, look through my 2 inboxes, and go, great, for these 4 people, draft this response. For this 1 person, write this response. For these 3 things, add it to my to-do list and archive them. And I can just very quickly go through. A lot of the time with here is I don't have him pretty much ever sending emails on my behalf, but he will draft emails on my behalf. So again, it's blank page syndrome, where instead of me having to come back and actually write out a response email, instead I'm just looking at his attempt at it, making a couple quick edits, and then clicking the send button. And that allows me to go through and to just very quickly run through a ton of emails in one go. Almost done there. I'll probably leave this for Q&A, but just here's a couple of AI tools that we're using. Just quickly before a bunch of questions come in about this. A lot of people want to know, like, why use an executive assistant when you can use AI instead? That's a great question, but you know what's better than an executive assistant? It's an executive assistant with AI. So, he can use all of these things to be more productive on my behalf. But here are a couple of the things that we use. You guys all know ChatGPT. ChatPRD is for product, like road mapping and stuff. CoachVox is from Jody here in the DC, which is nice. Fathom, TurboScribe, and Talktastic are all essentially note-taking like AIs or whatever. And so there's that. And then I think we're pretty much on to Q&A now. Quick resources there. Actually, I'll just go into Q&A. I'll bring that up later. Cool. Any other questions? Yes. CoachVox, so we serve maid service owners specifically. So we took all of our blog content, uploaded it into CoachVox, and created like maidcoach.ai. And so it's just a little thing that our users can go in and can be like, give me a marketing idea that'll work in rural Pennsylvania, and it'll spit something out. So not very popular yet. Doesn't work very well, just for the record. Go ahead.
The question about being private about your finances, what about private about your personal life? Because obviously he's getting an inside view of your ADHD mind, as you put it, so he already knows how your disorganization kind of runs.
Yeah.
Do you keep a cloak of professionalism between, or is it like, hey, I'm missing this meeting because I'm hungover? But like, does he have that kind of insight?
Yeah, he has that kind of insight. I mean, like. Yeah, I mean, we have like a group chat on WhatsApp with my wife that, like, my wife knows that if she wants something done, it's better to go to him than to come to me, right? Like, and so yeah, no, he's pretty deep in it personally. Like, I mean, when I hired, the feature of my job ad was like, I have ADHD, I'm looking for someone that likely grew up with like a brother with ADHD or something along like those lines, that it was like the defining part of my role was hiring someone like for that like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to work with him if I had to, like,
Yeah, because I imagine like one part of him being more successful in optimizing that relationship is telling him in all the areas that you're weak.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not honest with your executive assistant, they're not going to be able to help you as much as they possibly could. So. Okay, we got a lot of hands. You go first. Yeah.
Congratulations on optimizing this. I'm sure. You've been with this guy for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of any of your own weaknesses now that you can still improve on based on those 2 years? And sorry, just a follow-up question on that is, what would you do if you lost him?
Panic. Yeah. Sorry. First question was.
Are you self-aware of any areas that you can improve on as a leader?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, for first question was, are you aware of any like things that you could be like doing better like as a leader? Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone in this room, the answer will always be always, right? That like, I feel like we're a pretty self-aware like bunch. And so we, become aware of these things as they pop up. The beauty of having an executive assistant is that you don't have to do any of that work if you don't want to, right? Like with the rest of your team members, you kind of owe it to them, whereas like it's his job to deal with all of those things. But at the same time, he does a good job of making me aware, particularly when I'm making other team members feel like a certain way or whatever, that he'll help me with that sort of stuff. So yeah, I collect a lot of feedback from him on like a pretty like ongoing basis, and yeah, I'm aware of that. Like it starts more with me like letting him know right now if it's like, hey, like I'm not having a good day right now. Like I'm really sorry if I'm like snappy later on, right? And eventually I hope to not be snappy, but at this point, just bringing awareness to it is like step one. So yeah. Okay, first question was, is the daily call at the same time, or is it just ping him whenever I'm ready? The answer to that question is yes, it's whatever I want. Yeah, essentially we have it on the schedule every day for, I mean, it's not a good sign that I don't know what time it's at, but like, I think it's at 11 a.m. UK time is typically like our scheduled call time, but most days I'm messaging him and just being like, hey, you know, about to take the dog for a walk, can you chat in 30 minutes? And then he lets me know his availability, and then we jump on a call and we'll chat. But yeah, it changes a lot when I'm changing locations. That right now, because of time zones, we essentially have to do it like on call every single day, just because our schedules are so different. When I'm settled down in Europe, then it's a lot more consistent. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you recommend hiring someone local or is remote? Like, do you find benefits?
I would say that you want someone who is in a similar time zone. I don't think that they necessarily need to be local. In fact, I'm looking at getting like a personal assistant and finding someone who's actually local. But I think that the job descriptions would be different enough that you probably want someone that's remote but working close hours to you for all of the digital stuff, and then the skill set that you need for like in-person stuff is probably going to be quite different. Yeah. Sorry, there's too many hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just a quick question. So you hire this person yourself in-house, right?
So I hired through jobrack.eu,
Right.
which is Noel's company. Yeah.
Have you ever tried like things like Athena executive assistants or some of the other like EA agencies? And if so, what was your experience?
I've tried a couple of them. I mean, honestly, not enough to really like speak, you know, like educatedly like on the topic. I've heard people that have had great experiences with both. I definitely prefer for something like this for it to be like in-house and to be like trained up. But yeah, I don't know if Frankie's here, but Frankie was talking about how he's got someone through through Athena and is like quite happy with them. You do? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Is this your first hire of an EA? And if so, how long did it take for that process to happen?
I've tried to hire a couple of different times. I had one EA before this one, and yeah, she was terrible. It was like a Dr. Jekyll and like Mr. Hyde like situation where it was like during the initial like onboarding and evaluation phase, she was outstanding, and then like as soon as we got past that phase, she managed to somehow stick in the company for like 6 to 8 weeks before we realized that she just stopped doing pretty much anything. So that was horrible. And then I think I might have had one other like failed attempt. So probably three attempts. So but yeah, with this one, Noel's team made it all pretty like smooth and straightforward. I pretty much talked to 2 people, I think, to make this hire. So yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, are you concerned that they might be run over by a bus one day and then?
Always,
Yeah.
every day.
So you like try and ensure that they're putting things like documenting things that
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's also the risk of any like good hire, right? You know that like I think that it would be a real pain if I lost Frane right now, but I'd recover from it, you know? Like I'd have to go find somebody else, and if that didn't work out, then it might take some time to actually like replace them. But like, for example, my personal Notion is very, very well organized now, so someone could come in and could take over his like position, but then also like we have such a good working relationship and just the way in which we communicate and everything that even if I found someone to come in and to like follow the things that he'd laid out, it would still be only 30 or 40% of what he does, right? So like, yeah, I think that's inevitable. And like, if you asked me that question and I was like, no, I'm not concerned about that, I would probably guess that he's not a very good EA, right? So yeah, yeah. When is it a good time?
$4,000
Yeah, as soon, the instant you can afford it. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any friends that have successfully hired an EA that went like, oh, I wish I'd waited for longer, right? But I have plenty of friends that have tried and were like, this didn't work out at all. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a tough one because like arguably you never really need an EA, right? Like I could do everything that he helps me with, right? Like I just don't want to. right? So yeah, I mean, really, it's like the sooner the better. It's like really the sooner the better. Yeah.
Any tricks? I know that job rec knows you hiring, but how do you understand this? Did you give any kind of test task, or how did you choose between those people?
Yeah. Okay. Question was how are we able to almost determine like their drive and how good they were, and how do we essentially evaluate them, right? So going through like a recruitment agency was obviously like really really quite useful, where they took them through multiple interviews, they checked a lot of like the references and did a lot of that stuff. So for me, it was like I was able to trust that whoever they were bringing me was going to be like good enough at the job, and then it was really more about finding someone that like worked with me well. So we did do a couple of like test cases and stuff like that. And that might have been things like, I'm going to DCBKK in, in a couple of weeks. Can you find me like flights and accommodation? Right? And then we would see what they came back with. And that it's not just evaluating whether they found what we were looking for, but it's more about how did they think about the problem, right? And what were they actually thinking? So like the first person that I hired that was outstanding until she wasn't, when we ran that test task through her, she came back and was like, here's 3 Airbnbs that are walking distance from the venue. You know, here's like options for flights that are coming in. And then by the way, like I saw that you're a fan of Gary Vee. He's speaking at another event the day before. Here's details on that if you also wanted to do that, which was just like a wow, like, you know, sort of like reply or whatever. So that was like the first person that we hired. And so you can tell a lot for, you can tell a lot by how somebody is thinking about the problem. So that's true for all hires. Like for all of my senior hires now at my company, I'm trying to ask those questions to figure out how they're thinking about the problem rather than some end result. And then like with any other position, communication is like the number one thing. If you have any miscommunications with your EA, they shouldn't remain your EA for much longer. So yeah.
How much do you have him helping with personal stuff? Like you say, I need a landscaper. Is he helping with that?
Yeah.
Or like,
so again, that's where like him being the executive assistant is like he's just there to make my life as easy as possible. And so for all of us in the room being entrepreneurs, it doesn't make much of a difference whether we save an hour on some work task or whether we save an hour on like laundry, right? Ultimately, we're still saving an hour that we can then choose to use however we want. So like the most recent message that I saw from like my wife before we started this presentation was she just put into the group chat with me and Frane saying, hey, we want to get a reservation at this place in Tokyo, but you can't reserve until 30 days before. Set a reminder and get this booked when tickets are available. And so we'll have him look up a bunch of different things. He'll book appointments for me in the UK. Yeah, he's helping with all sorts of stuff. The number of things where I'm just sending him a message and just saying, hey, we need to order this off of Amazon is quite high.
so he's almost like he's her assistant too. Or is there any
Yeah.
line?
I mean, she'll check with me if she's asking him for something that's like a lot, or he'll check with me if there's something that's getting in the way of him getting the regular stuff done. If she asks him to do something that might take 5 or 10 hours of time, he'll check in with me and just be like, hey, how do you want me to what's the order of operations here? So, but generally, no. Generally, it's pretty solid. Yeah, Ollie?
Two questions. So number one is what does he do for holiday? Like, does he get holiday? And how do you survive?
Yeah.
And the second one is what tasks are a terrible fit for delegating? So what would you not let him do?
Yeah. Okay. Very good questions. First question is what what's his vacation policy, or like what happens when he goes on vacation. So I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what his vacation policy is. He just pretty much lets me know when he like needs time off, and occasionally that'll be like a week with family. Sometimes it'll just be an afternoon or a day. The last time, sorry, I lose my voice here. The last time that that he went offline for like 5 days, I essentially was just like, well, there goes my productivity, and pretty much just took the week off. Like I did a bit of stuff, but it's more like double vacation. It's like I take my time off, he takes his time off, and I take his time off too. So, you know. But no, like if we're being honest though, like it really does impact, because like essentially when he took the time off, I essentially had to talk to him and to be like, look, like if you're taking the time off, you need to like, you know, turn off Slack notifications, because just because you're gone doesn't mean that I stop messaging you. And so the expectation was I will still send you all the same messages that I typically do. The only difference is that I'm not expecting you to see any of them or to act on any of them or to add any of them to the to-do list until you're officially back on the grid. Right? And so then he's always really responsive, that even when he's like offline, he still gets back to me like very quickly. But yeah, I try to not change like too much there. And then of course, there's always time sensitive things while he's off where it's just annoying and I have to do my own work. So what was your second question?
What tasks aren't great for delegating?
That's a very good question. Okay, yeah, so what tasks are not great for delegating? So the best thing might be almost like the inverse of this, like this question is, so of course, anything that's well-defined is going to work very nicely, and anytime you know that like this is the very specific output that I want, even if how to get to that output is not necessarily well-defined, where I have found trouble is essentially when I'm asking him to do things, particularly that are within the company, where I'm maybe asking for something that's like, it's almost like expertise that's outside of like his like sort of range. So I would not ask him to create me a landing page, but I might ask him to use ChatGPT to create me a landing page outline and to fill it in as best as he can. But with that, it's almost like a difference in expectations, where if I'm ever asking him to give me something like that, the expectation is never that it's going to be like good to go, or that it's going to be the level of something that Alex is going to give me as like the CTO like at ZenMate. The idea for him is to help me to get to 80% in a lot of the tasks that I have. And so that's really what it is, that like I can't ask him to like think on my behalf as the CEO, but I can ask him to prep a bunch of things so I can do my thinking. So that's really where the magic happens. Yeah. I don't, but I would say that's only because I've never really had a problem with it, that he knows to check in with me if something is taking longer than maybe one of us would have like expected, and we're good about checking in on those things, but I don't tend to set deadlines unless it's truly necessary. Occasionally, you know, for this it was like, hey, I need slides updated for whatever, and it needs to be done by this day so we can do the practice presentation, but generally it's not necessary. Yeah, that's up to you. All right. Oh, let me go back here. Couple extra resources: Dynamite Jobs, jobrack.eu, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. If you want to see someone that doesn't have ADHD give this exact presentation, that is a much better and much more like you know, organized way of going through this. Lots of frameworks, all of that stuff. You can find me at my website, theamericandream.com. You can find me on Twitter, or you can email me, or I'm getting more active on LinkedIn. So if you guys are the slightest bit professional and want to add me on LinkedIn, it's Amar Ghose. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's any other, yeah. We're good. Yeah, and then some bonus slides there. But yeah, happy to answer any other questions if anyone has any. So thank you all for coming. Thanks.